let's get into this best of 3 TvP played on the ESL Korean Open Cup number 122, apparently, if you ever want to go and look. We have, oh, Classic messing up. We got the top right of Glittering Ashes. It is Alpha X's Classic. And in the bottom left, we have Byun for the Shopify Rebellion. And that's, it's not on the correct add-on thingy on the map. Darn. And this is not the correct overlay either. Oh, I should have checked. Oh, it is, okay. It is the right overlay, that's right. It doesn't have arrows, it has numbers. We're good then, we're good. But it doesn't have the game hurt. So I can't check the income, but if you were to have the income graph, Classic messing up like that would have gone whoop, and then back up. It will affect his build order ever so slightly. Ever so slightly, I mean very slightly. Anyways. Not to delve too much into that, let's actually get some of the background information on the players, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with because it is two great names of StarCraft at this point. Classic, a little bit of a great name of StarCraft 1. I don't know if great is quite the word for his Brood War career, but he was there and he was definitely good. But he was also Terran, so it was very different. In fact, I'm pretty sure about that. It's been a while since I've talked about Classic's history, because of course what is more recent history and more important history is that he went to the military, like every Korean male has to. And that is about, it's less than 2 years at this point. I think it's 20 months maybe, or maybe even less now, as they keep on slightly reducing it. But he's come back, and he is, whoopsie-daisy, looking really, really, really good. Byun, of course, also got back from the military a couple of years ago, a bit before Classic. So, I mean, the battle of the returnees, all right? The battle of the old guys, which most of Korea has old guys, very quotation marks, by the way, because we're talking about maybe late 20s, if that. But we have something interesting. So Byun goes for a lot of, I guess you would say, unorthodox builds. They're not exactly super, super weird, but he definitely doesn't just do like 3cc, even, well, actually that's kind of weird too, but he doesn't do just like a 1 Rax 111. He's all about the factory expands, the not letting the Protoss know exactly what he's up to, and occasionally actually being aggressive. In this case, he did not proxy a barracks, but he did go into that factory expand, so we'll have an earlier factory unit. Reaper's getting around, scouting everything, and it sees no technology and no second pylon from the Protoss, which if you're familiar in the PvP matchup, no second pylon means something's happening. Same thing, actually, in every other matchup the Protoss has. If their second pylon isn't at home, then there's something weird. And really, if you wanted to do the math, if you wanted to memorize a pylon table, you could probably even tell if they're missing like their 6th or 7th pylon, if you really wanted to go that deep. I know in PvP, some Protoss players say that the 4th pylon missing means that there's a proxy Dark Shrine. But anyway, same deal, right? So there's something somewhere. Byun is pretty well guarded against anything weird from Classic, though, by nature of his build. I mean, the factory expand, I mean, I guess, what did it start off with? Was it first a defensive build, or was it second a defensive build? Either way, it can go a little aggressive, it can be just, like, really defensive, right? If there was a proxy gate, him being up on the high ground, beautiful. If there's a Stargate, then him actually having 4 Marines, and what could have been a Cyclone, right? If he was really playing defensive, would also be great. But in this case, Byun did just make a medevac, so he's gonna wanna be careful about the timing here. I think he was actually waiting for the Oracle timing. It kind of took like a weird path for being proxied, so it was maybe a couple seconds later than usual. And I think Byun was actually waiting for that, because he knew that something was on the way, most likely a proxy Stargate, and he just needed to wait out that time and we're picking up these Marines. So that's, I mean, he could have gone for that faster Cyclone, but he really wanted to expedite to a Raven, possibly thinking that it could be a proxy Dark Templar build, which I guess that would also make sense. It looks like he finally scouted the Stargate with something, but I definitely checked before and he hadn't seen it, right? I'm not crazy. But now he also saw that it was a proxy gateway. So he's gonna go after it. That is a bold decision, to be honest. Yeah, I think mistakes were made. Mistakes were made. Oh, Byun. So if that was a 3rd Oracle, and Classic has done this a few times at this point, just kind of rallied Oracles into his opponent, then that might have worked out. You know, wouldn't have been punished at the very least. He would have picked up and got out of there with the Stalkers warping in. But because it was a Phoenix, yeah, I couldn't even really get an escape going. So losing a medevac, losing those Marines, taking away the power of the defense, also taking away any second guessing that Classic would usually do. With a medevac out in the field, kind of like a war prism out in the field, it could be anywhere, it could be doing anything. Do you want to spend time chasing it down, or do you want to spend time doing the execution of your build? And now the medevac's gone. There's no question. Classic can just focus on his Oracle control, which is quite good, by the way. We saw a little bit of that when he entered into the main. Of course, he was pushed away very quickly, so we didn't get to see all of his Oracle control. But in my eyes, Classic was always one of the best ones. I don't know, it just always seemed like he was able to glide the Oracles 99% of the time. Stats was very active with Oracles, so I know people say that he's the best with Oracles, or was in the past tense. But I don't know. Well, this is... Oh, yeah, it's... Caster Curse is my bad, but the Oracle still did kill a couple of SCVs. I mean, Classic was playing with fire, and he knew that. So 6 SCVs, I mean, you know, it's whatever. Classic was already in a good position. Classic had not dedicated as much and lost as much, right, as Byun did. So Byun opened up with a factory expand, Classic opened up with a proxy Stargate, but on 2 bases. And then Byun was the one that lost his army. So... this was... If it was just as out in the probe and the Oracle didn't die, this would be a catastrophe of a game. But at least Byun got one of those Oracles. At least. I don't know how he's gonna get himself out of this pickle. He's only halfway to stim. He's down 17 workers, which more importantly means that Classic is saturated on 3 bases. So he could choose, without any repercussions whatsoever, to stop building probes. Where if you're not saturated on 3 bases, you're on like 8 out of 16, right? Then you're sacrificing something to do this attack. Classic's not even sacrificing anything. He's on perfect saturation. He's getting a 4th base. He's going to go ahead and rebuild some probes. But as Blinken +1 finishes, he's looking to tango a little bit with the incoming army. Maybe not entirely, but you can see that he's planning to force field off a decent chunk of the units. The tanks will siege up in response. It's really the only thing they can do. No, they won't even do that, which means, yeah, ooh, this is not so good. The Raven only gets 1 auto turret down instead of 2. This is a complete disaster. Oh my god, Classic all over this push. Byun just had no idea that was waiting. No idea that was waiting. Which does make sense. I mean, Classic could have used only his stalkers to just kind of poke and prod and watch the engagement on its way, which still would have netted him a victory, in my opinion. He still would have had Buku charge lots back at home if that's the plan. But instead, he went kind of offensive, warped in a lot of stalkers, warped in just a couple of sentries, and then cut up that army in a place where Byun had no idea to be prepared. There's just no reason you would think that there is an army there. So really masterful game there from Classic. And Byun's gonna have to think of something different. And now we get into game number 2 with Classic up 1-0. Bottom right Classic, top left Byun. Last map did not go well at all for Byun. At all. Everything that he planned died. He planted 5 seeds in 5 pots, and every single one of them died. Immediately. It just wasn't a very pretty game, and it's a game that you can't necessarily even blame yourself for to a certain degree. I do think that Byun going after the Stargate when he knew there was a proxy gateway there as well was a little ambitious. You know, hindsight 2020, you don't do that. But like I was saying, is that he probably figured that it was either not a 3rd unit, or if the 3rd unit was coming, it would maybe another Oracle, because this is something that Classic has done in the past. So he wouldn't have been punished. The stalkers would have warped in. He would have said, oh, 2 stalkers won't kill a medevac. I'll boost out at the last second. And then he would have had a medevac and 7 Marines, or whatever it was. But a Phoenix popped out. And so even if he tried to boost home, it would have been probably too far gone. So now Byun is going to change up the game from the very get-go by going for an engineering bay block. I don't believe he tried doing this last game. If he tried, he failed. He's also going to go for a 1-Rex expand, so not going to bother with the opening shenanigans. And as far as the scouting on Byun's side, you know, he knew that there was a proxy something. He waited that out really well. And, you know, kind of perfect defense initially. But just having to run around. And also kind of feeling the obligation to use that medevac, I feel like is from Byun, it's a little bit of obligation. He is not going for a 1x expand, by the way. He did out on a factory, so he went marine right into factory. So it's only 1 unit, so he could delay his supply depot, and so he doesn't need a second gas. Interesting. Interesting that he still did this, even though he didn't have to. Maybe if the engineer bay block had been more successful, he would have been scared of a... I don't know. All right, well, that's what he's going to do. And he is following it up with a reactor and a tech lab, so I'm not like really worried about follow-up cyclone shenanigans. But another high ground command center, too, even though, again, he sees that this is really not dangerous. And this time, he even saw the second pylon. So he knows that there's... I mean, there's a chance there's a third pylon out there. That's always true. But... I'm a little surprised by that. Ah, this is why. So he's going to swap over to the factory. Okay, he's going to go for the Hellions. Reason this would be very scary for the Terran is not the initial wave of Hellions. The initial wave of Hellions going to overpower the initial wave of units from a 2-base Protoss player. So an Adept, a Stalker, something that Hellions can't handle. You talk about 3 or 4 Stalkers, like a proxy gateway, and then you're kind of screwed. But now, for now, this is fine, and the Hellions will try and do a bunch of damage. They'll get a bunch of scouting, too. We'll probably see it at the Stargate again. And then, beyond that, you don't have many fighting units. And a couple of Widow Mines don't really count, because they're, one shot, 1 kill, but still only 1 shot. So you do have to be careful if you open up this way. But really fast Hellions is going to catch a Protoss player without many units in general. So if Classic were to use an Adept offensively, go, oh no, it's a Hellion, and then lose that Adept, and then only have 1 or 2 Hellions just now coming out... I mean, the Hellions absolutely could have run into the natural. Even now they could try, but probably would not be worth it. As the probes would pull back to the Adepts, which is trying to safeguard them. And now Classic is just trying to figure out exactly what's going on. So he lost track of the Hellions, right? And he's wondering if it's a medevac drop, because he has not gotten full scouting, first of all. He did do some scouting, as you can see. Yeah, he scouted the most common proxy location. Technically, it could be over here. And of course, technically, the starport was made at home. That could still send a medevac over and still do a drop. So, Classic's just trying to make sure his base is on lockdown, which does put him in a very defensive situation, where he probably wanted to use his Adepts and an Oracle a little more aggressively. The Phoenix are going to help tear down this attack after the attack. Right, so the Widow Mines will drop out, the Hellions will run in, and we'll see how much damage it does. But the Phoenix will be to clean everything up. Question is, can you get any counterattack damage? How bad is this going to be? It's already not great. A little late on that probe pull. Whew. I always wondered one of those Widow Mines was gonna actually chase after the probe. Sometimes that targeting reticle, right, is ridiculous. I was gonna say it wasn't with an armory, just simply put, hadn't popped off yet. The medevac survived. ET dubs. 3 Widow Mines, medevac still alive. 2 Hellions still alive too, which sometimes the later Hellions are exactly what you need. Well, this is exactly not what Byun needs. Good response time from Byun. Classic a little late to picking up on that. By the way, behind everything that's going on, 2 barracks going on to a 3rd, 1 on the way. He's actually gonna bother getting a Raven, even though it is a Phoenix opener. That's a little interesting. Is this going to go into Phoenix Colossus? Something that Byun did kind of scout. Yeah, he did, actually. So the 2 gases, the Robo's coming down. Didn't have to scout the robotics bay to know that this is going to be Colossus on the way. So that might be one of the reasons that a Raven could actually do very well. As always, no matter what your opponent's doing behind those Phoenix, the question is, can the Phoenix kill the Raven, or can you save your Raven and actually use it for an interference matrix? Usually, Phoenix kill Raven. That's how it goes. And Phoenix now kill SCVs. So it's a little more annoying. So that's generally why you wouldn't really want it, but the interference matrix on the Colossus could be huge. Up against Phoenix charge lot, then I think a Raven is often not useful, but it is Phoenix Colossus, and Byun is aware of it, waiting for all his upgrades. And with the opening not going poorly really for either player, I mean, some probes died. Actually. 54 to 47 probes. I'm a little surprised. Classic now getting a better probe count, but was surprisingly close to Byun for a while there. He's still not saturated quite yet. He's supply blocked currently. Oh, we have some indirect damage coming into Classic's game here, which is usually not something you speak of too often. You know, the forced errors, sure, still get forced in pro games, but usually when it comes to something specifically like being supply blocked, you don't usually have to worry about it. You don't talk about it very much to the caster because it doesn't happen that often. But in this case, it wasn't even particularly forced. I mean, there wasn't much happening. It was the two Hellions running in. But like I said, someone's the exact thing that you need. Oh, and Classic is going right into +1 attacks. He's going to continue building Phoenix, make them a little bit beefier, and possibly go into even just like 4 Colossus instead of 3, maybe even more Colossus. He really wants to play that particular style. Drop in the main, very dangerous to the probes and to the Phoenix, but a single Colossus will help take care of that. And while it lasts probably too long, oh no, oh geez. Yeah, this lasts way too long. Classic, oh, he is messing up. And I don't necessarily think that was all that forced. The Raven actually gets to be implemented here because the Phoenix were dealing with the drop in the main base, which they'd already done what they needed to do. That was a bit of a snowball. That could have been way worse. That was almost a 1-2 punch that actually knocked Classic out, but he handles the attack of the third base as well as he could, considering how poorly set up he was. Yeah, those Phoenix in the main, they took down the medevac. That's really the only thing they're supposed to do, and then one Colossus takes on 6 Marines, I think it was. I mean, I guess if the 6 Marines are perfectly microed, maybe it doesn't, but, you know, usually it does. But the Phoenix distracted like that, and for so long, too, a couple of extra seconds being huge. The interference matrix actually came out. Fortunately for Classic, the Colossus did not derp so hard as to run face first into the Terran army, which is what it usually does after getting matrixed. But yeah, still not a very clean game for Classic. He is getting up to 4 bases, but this attack also seems kind of dangerous. You still have the Raven in play. Throws out an anti-armor missile because it was pretty guaranteed it was going to splash a lot of things. And still had an interference matrix in the bank, right? But the Raven is one huge problem that still exists. The Phoenix have not taken it out. The number of Marauders is also really good. So I don't think Classic really had much to do there. You kind of have to try. In the Protoss position, you kind of have to try. But especially considering he doesn't have any upgrades. I mean, I saw that +1 air attack, and I guess just in my mind, I thought there was +1 ground attack on the way as well. But no. No. Forge is only just now finishing. So that was a very, very flimsy army. Despite 4 Colossus up against Marauders, EMPs, well, shortly going to be EMPs, and, you know, the double interference matrix potentially, Classic's army would have been torn to shreds. This supply is not indicative of the actual situation. Classic is being quite greedy at this point, too, not just going for the number of Phoenix or the +1 air for the Phoenix, right? That's something I could see, you know, nice doing, I guess, like for a long period of time. You know, throw Phoenix, throw charge lots, but without those ground attack or armor upgrades, either one. And there wasn't much oomph to the ground army, so Classic's true plan, I guess, has been to just jump a couple of steps ahead and go into Stargates and Tempests, which might be a big surprise to Byun, who probably at some point has clicked on the Phoenix to see that they're +1. I would say a lot of people would not bother with the Phoenix unless they play Roddy a lot. They just assume they come out, they do their thing, and then they eventually disappear, right? But I think maybe the pros would make sure to click on them. If you see they have +1, you'd be a little surprised. You'd be like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But would your mind immediately go to like Tempest and Kara's already being out? Hopefully it's where it would go, because that's exactly what's happening. We're getting a very Wings of Liberty-esque type of army. I know there's Tempest, I know there's Disruptors, but we got Colossus and Carriers, all right? Colossus and Carriers and all attack upgrades. You either win with your attack, or the Terran player is actually just coordinated the attack well enough to take care of you, because that's really what it comes down to, is a lot of the coordination. The Protoss player finds a Terran player bunched up like this, not paying attention, and the Protoss army wins fairly easily, maybe. especially with the disruptors actually getting shots, right? If it engages an army like this with a concave, the EMPs come down first and foremost, the Raven actually gets his energy shot off, and the Viking count's more like an 8 or a 10, then, depending on how good the concave is, really, the Protoss army is pretty flimsy. So, but it comes a lot down to the engagement, a lot down to the engagement. And obviously, Byun does have to also acknowledge what he's up against, but he saw the Tempest, figure out the carriers, and he knows it's going to be super late game. So I'm a little surprised he hasn't gone into a couple more starports just because he can afford it. Oh, there we go. Okay. I was going to say, maybe 4 bases, you build 2 more starports, right? Even if your plan isn't necessarily to go all in on the air. And by all in on the air, I mean Viking, Liberator, Ghost. Is really what I'm talking about there. I'm still going to play around a lot with the ground army. Classic has managed to reach the far left, which is quite difficult to do on this map, to take the base. I'm just going to be thankful that he's allowed to have that one. Byun probably thankful he's allowed to have an orbital at his 4th. So there's that. But Classic isn't just stopping at 5 bases. He is actually going up to 6, which if Byun isn't on the ball, he could misconstrue. He could think that's a 5th. And that would be bad news. That would be really bad news. Oh, we might have the engagement coming down. The Raven's the first thing used. Don't think we've had EMPs quite yet. As Byun's instinct is to just stutter step away, make sure he's away from the disruptors. But the anti-air missile, I mean, it's a good use of it. And again, a couple of interference magic still available as the Raven still yet lives, even against +2. That was +2 Phoenix carriers and Tempest. You think a Raven would go down, but it barely didn't. And we're also at 11 Vikings at this point, which isn't enough to just go and win by their own, right? No, absolutely not. But in conjunction with a decent number of Marines, this is a fairly good army. The Marauders look unnecessary because we have 4 Colossus. If we went pure Marine, they'd be pure burnt to death. It wouldn't look pretty. But if we went pure Marauder, then obviously we need a lot more of that air. But with even 20 Marines, we're at 28 Marines. Even with 20 Marines, their ability to take down these interceptors is also important. So that's kind of what's happening as he steps back. And trying to control the air too. Did we finally lose that Raven? We did finally lose the Raven. Disruptors being used to not get very much. That wasn't a lot of disruptors. There was 2 or 3, and now I believe they're all gone. So we're down to really just the air after an EMP, and it didn't take very many. I think that was 2 EMPs. An army like this is going to clump hella hard because you got those 2 dimensions, the ground and the air. They're just going to clump on top of each other, and they're not even going to spread out that much once they've stalled, which is what you're supposed to do in StarCraft. It's supposed to spread out afterwards. They don't even do that much. They really are the clumpiest race, Protoss. There is benefit to having a death ball as BS as it looks to the people who have to get the concave and the cool engagement. And I do like what Byun's doing here. He is probably kind of hoping that this engagement happens around here, because this is where his bases are. They literally just completed to orbitals. This is where his stack defense is. I mean, it's pretty much on lockdown. Oh, okay, he did drop. Forced to recall by the looks of things. But he also is going to use it to attack, right? Given an opportunity. So Classic kind of doing the same thing. He is defending his 5th base. I'm going to call this one his 6th, even though it came down first. It's a little more of a... I had to say, like, well, if I can get it, I can get it. That'd be nice. But I don't think I can get it. That's the type of base that it is. So we see here that Classic acknowledges he can't really hold on to it. But I think Byun lost track of the army at some point. Maybe scanned and saw only a couple of Tempests, so he's preparing to take an engagement on this side of the map. And he scans and sees that, yes, the engagement will be happening here. EMPs trying to take down these storms, because Classic actually bothered getting storm. Something you might not see a lot of, just because the assumption is that they're going to die. And it's also, to give Protoss some credit here, it's also another ability that they have to use. Although this army is not particularly ability dependent. I mean, we don't even have disruptors anymore, so I guess it's really not that hard for Classic to use storms. Oh! And this is where a storm would be absolutely beautiful, right? Unfortunately, while the Vikings are getting pushed back, they're still dealing damage, and the ground army has blitzed over to that left side base, gonna get that kill. Classic barely saving the probes, now looking for the engagement, but he's gotta be careful. It's a big concave, and there's lots of EMPs still available. They actually clipped the High Templar, So there was at least one more storm there. But I think Byun, he was kind of looking at the injuries, right? A lot of his army was in the red or orange, the Vikings especially, so he didn't really want to take an engagement. And for Classic, that concave and the suddenly only down to one AoE, the one storm, that was also a little sketch. We have one Colossus as well, but that's hardly adding a lot of damage at this point. Enough to be annoying, for sure. Enough to help with the Marine problem, but we're also kind of adding more of those Vikings and less dependency on the ground army as is. We're getting more into the potential Viking Liberator Ghost. I do think we'll see Liberators soon. We don't have any Fusion Core upgrade on the way, though, and no Fusion Core. Yes, we do have Fusion Core, so we should have Liberator range. And he just hasn't gotten it yet. Made sure to get +2 ship weapons within building Vikings as well. That makes a lot of sense. But I do think that's the ultimate late game composition. I think it was Cure who was showing off a couple of supreme late game TvPs where... Actually, it might not have been Cure. It might have been like Bunny or Dream. One of the Terrans doesn't get as much credit, basically. But they were showing off some really, really, really good late game control. And it came down to basically just Viking Liberator Ghosts. Anywho, this is annoying. DTs in the main base, in the natural, all over the place. And Byun, he did bother building a planetary off to the left side. He has not built a planetary off to the right side, right? So actually defending locations can be quite difficult to do. Not that a planetary helps all that much, perhaps, in the super late game. There's so many good units to tear down a planetary. DTs is really what I'm thinking of. I still think that it's something that a Protoss player would love to see is an orbital just sitting there totally undefended, right? This was not totally undefended, but I was able to race over fast enough. Does he have a nuke? He does have a nuke. To defend what is 3 orbitals, which he really can't afford to lose. So he did lose a lot of that SAC defense he had invested into. Both of them starting to bank quite a bit. Maybe not the most important thing in the world. Nukes probably going to be most beneficial to kill some of the SAC defense, to open up opportunities for the Ghost as is to get a shot. In case look at the nuke off. Or for a drop to do some damage. Oh, the Disruptors did not get those shots off of the Marauders. The Marauders are actually able to take out the Disruptors. I think they took out a couple of those High Templar, and the Marine Ghost Viking combination afterwards. It's just gonna blitz through these Tempest and Carriers. All the Interceptors are already gone. The Tempest so damn terrible against a number of Marines, any number of Marines really, unless they are taking advantage of their range. Byun takes a fabulous fight. Classic had to get the heck out of there. And now he's going to lose that top right base after losing the bottom left base. He is on 5 bases, a couple of them still fresh. It's not dire means yet, but as Curious Minds, one of the harder maps to actually get to that 6th base, something you're talking about the very edges of the map, and Classic has to be concerned. If his army is not good enough to win an engagement, then what is it really going to do? You know, if it can't, it's not exactly an army that's going to try and trade over and over and over again. It's not Stalker or Zealots. So the one thing you would hope for it to do is take a good fight. It just took a terrible one. And Classic can certainly do better. He's going to get more of those High Templars involved, more of the Disruptors, and a lot more of the Carriers, too. Oh, Mass Snipes coming down on the Zealots. I mean, that's one way to take care of things. And since Classic is just going with this composition, I mean, yeah, you really don't need anything else besides Marine Viking Ghost. You don't need those Liberators that I was talking about. You don't even need the Marauders anymore. Because the Colossus aren't involved, and your ultimate goal is just stop all storms from happening. Either dodge the storms, or just EMP them. And EMPing them is pretty easy. It is. It's hard to miss with today's EMP technology. So for Classic to depend on it, seems a little sketch. I would actually kind of prefer him to go back into Colossus. I think Colossus are a lot more complicated for a Terran player to deal with. I am speaking a little bit from personal experience, which doesn't mean much because I'm not a very good StarCraft player, but I don't know. I just really think that Colossus overall are going to be, because they don't get taken out of the equation instantly, is what I'm thinking, right? With the High Templars, especially with the way that the Protoss army is going to bulk up, I mean, it's a very high chance they'll be taken out of the equation entirely. So you got to control them really, really well. Right now, they are surviving The Tempest and Carriers are being the biggest bullies despite having no shields, and the Viking number, I guess, was just way too low to take advantage of this. Or actually, they're just not here. Here they come. I don't know where the hell they were, but there were 16 Vikings that weren't along for the ride. Now they're coming from behind. The EMPs have not hit those High Templars, though, so the Vikings taking a lot of damage from the storms, taking up almost all the storms, and only 4 Vikings are left. 4 more on the way, and some of that Bi army managed to survive, tucked away in that corner base. But that was way too scary for Byun there. That was Vikings simply being out of place. I don't know what they were doing, what they were trying to do. They were just miscontrolled, or they were hoping to dodge the storms. They're playing the safest game possible. But I think there would have been a lot more potential if they were also kiting alongside the Bi army, right? Because then the High Templars were doing what they were doing, which is hiding. They were hiding for a lot of that engagement. And only when the Vikings appeared were they suddenly, viable. Were they actually able to get some damage done? And with the damage they did, Classic can say that he did win that fight. Not even kind of. He did win that fight. He took down an orbital, but it's not over yet. There's still the army left over. Disruptor shot's not even hitting. Some storms are, but I think that's the last of the storms. And the scan's going to reveal that too. Marines still at 3-3 are going to take on these interceptors. And the Vikings now back up to a count of 11. And I believe with +2 ship weapons, are going to take on these carriers. The Archons here, surprisingly helpful, but need to get back to those shield batteries. 2 Disruptors looking for a couple of shots if they even need to. Actually, I think with the Interceptors rebuilding, it looks like this tug of war is going to end for now in favor of Classic. A lot because he had the shield batteries up and running. Perhaps if there were any shield batteries, Byun would have continued on, but would have been playing a very dangerous game, not quite certain about Classic's reinforcement potential, right? I think he has some idea. It's a very expensive army that Classic has built and actually rebuilt since that terrible attack up on this side of the things. And Byun knows that there hasn't been a 6th base in equation. So you can kind of take 2 and 2 and think, there's no way this Protoss player has a lot of money, right? He's like, I'm strapped for cash. He should be strapped for cash. But you never are quite certain. So the last thing you want to do is continue blitzing on top of an army like that into like 20 charge lots. Or, more High Templars that were saved in Classic's back pocket. But fortunately for Byun, very much is the situation that Classic does not have enough money. He does not have enough bases. He is running out of steam. His engagements aren't going well enough, as they both are low on cash. Byun's taking a bit better of the trades. And that's actually quite important. The orbital's going down, though. I mean, Classic, I think those orbitals are kind of important. I can understand why he wouldn't want to chase after them. But, I kind of wish that he had. 2 less mules every 50 energy. And less scans, really. I mean, both are really important right now. Byun needs mules to make up for a low SCV count, or not even really for that, to be honest. He needs to just mule as fast as possible and grab the minerals and get the heck out. That's why mules are really great in a game like this, is because you can take 30 seconds and then make yourself rich and skedaddle if the Protoss catches on to what you're doing. But also the scans. I mean, a lot of the back and forth in a patch like this is going to be scouting based. So the Protoss player, I mean, they have an Oracle, maybe, but the Vikings do shoot that down. They have an Observer that usually gets that vision first, maybe gets EMP'd later. The Terrans, they need to know the full extent of the army. They gotta scan. So another reason why orbitals are really important. And it looks like that scan just told Byun he can probably take on the army. He's gotta still do a little bit of microing, though. Can't just let the Zealots chop up his Marauders like that. And the Vikings do have to make sure to focus fire. Every time the Vikings attack an interceptor, it's just tragedy. Tragedy on the side of the Terran. Another scan's going to see a retreating army. Still a very frightening army, though. That's a decent amount of interceptors. It's a decent amount of storm. Talking about 4 disruptors on the grounds. The disruptors are forcing some of this problem to happen. They're forcing, Marauders to die, first of all. They're also forcing the Terran army to split and concave and not shoot, basically. So Byun just lost a decent chunk of supply. With his Bi army not able to help, it really was only on his Vikings. The Vikings got obliterated, only down to 4 at this point. I mean, this is really scary. Classic, I mean, he's dangerously close to winning. He's finally gotten up a base to the top right, although he has not transferred his probes, and I'm pretty sure he's oversaturated in at least a couple of different bases. Classic's gonna have to crack this planetary, which I think is very doable. It's gonna kill a lot of SCVs as well. That was a freebie. For sure. Byun's trying to size up how he could take this engagement. He's gonna recall out? He couldn't see what was up these ramps and was too afraid of the Terran army being there. I get that, I get that. So he actually recalled to the very top right, so that might not even have been a scared thing. That could have been just simply put relocating, hoping that Byun is still chasing the bottom left, and then go up to the top right. You real bamboozle. Byun did not think he could go for the attack on the bottom left, I suppose, or was more concerned about destroying any base that could have been put in the top right. So he was already headed this direction. I think that was a bit coincidental. As it is, again, facing Classic in this position. The shield batteries could be falling back to. It's tough. I do think the EMP for an observer is absolutely worth it. That's a lot of disruptors, though. Ooh, yeah, that's a lot of disruptors. 4 High Templar tucked into the corners, too. I actually don't think that Byun can win this. All right. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. He just killed all the disruptors. Oh my god. How did he kill those disruptors? The army supply now equalized. Maybe Byun can win this engagement. Holy shit. Kind of want to rewind and look at that again. Okay, remind me, about 28 minutes. We're gonna go back and look at that. Holy shit. A couple of High Templars thought they were safe off to the left side, actually just get found out. One dies. Remember, Classic never really built up that much of a bank. I mean, this base is something that he absolutely needs. He is trickling in money. So if Byun can take an amazing engagement like that again, Classic's not gonna rebuild. 16 Vikings? That is a hefty number. They're not being stormed right now. The Archons and little T-Rex arms can't hit them either. EMPs blanket that ground army, while the carrier army just gets destroyed. And Byun? I mean, maybe. Maybe there is that chance. The supplies are back in favor of Classic, though, because he is the one that's mining. Byun has so little mining. 24 SCVs, all of which are absolutely not mining. He could be doing some long-distance mining, and that would be better. So we're talking about 4 Marauders. Oh my god, 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 oh my god! Oh! Oh, I can't believe he took those out too. He took those out. He takes out the Archons, the Storm hits the Zealots, the Marine Marauder is going to kite all day long against that. Even the Stalker's blinking forward, a little bit too much of an overreach. SCV's pulled to try and repair some of these Vikings, and Byun is going to take out this army by the looks of things. Classic is going to reinforce with Zealots, which can be kited all day by a guy like Byun, and somehow Byun takes on what was at one point like a 30 or 40 army supply advantage for the Protoss. He took that army on. And then, even still being down about 20 army supply, he takes another army on. Oh my god, Classic is going to be smacking his head at losing this one. Unfortunately, his army was not very good when it comes to chasing. You know, if he had 6 Zealots coming in from behind and he stopped the kiting of Byun, we're talking about a very different engagement, I think. But with all the kiting and this little doodad here, making sure some of the Vikings get some shots off. I mean, and then, of course, Classic trying to go for the engagement is kind of maybe the ultimate smack your head move. All right? At the time, it looked like he was going to win. He was like, yeah, okay, let's go for it. But now you look back on it, you're like, well, why I didn't even have to do that. He probably could have disengaged earlier. I'm not sure exactly when he would have read to disengage, but let's just say earlier, and he maybe could have gone over to his shield batteries. And then, you know, he still doesn't make any headway, I suppose, but I don't know. I don't know. It was such a close engagement. You could see how Classic would think he was going to win that. And now we're talking about both of them having the corner bases. Byun's new best buddy is this base down here. Yeah, it means he's not taking on Classic's base, but at least he's got base mining again. He can rebuild some of these ghosts because, oh, he got very low on them. Yes, he did. He's at 3, so I think a couple are at home, but making 5 more. A lot of times, I would say, a late game like this, players are going to have a surprisingly large gas bank. Maybe, you know, not like 1,000 or 2,000, but just more like 800. So, you know, one of the first things a Protoss is going to do is be like, Archons! But just in general, we know how good EMPs are. I don't know if you'd invest totally into them, but, you know, at this point, spellcasters, right? Let's just, like, just get there. Spellcasters are a good thing to have in a low economy situation. So, that's ditto for the Protoss. Love spellcasters in this situation as well. High Templars and Storm, Disruptors, and their Disruptor shot, I guess. But one of the Protoss's spellcasters gets obliterated. The EMP is just straight up better than the High Templar. I mean, feedbacks do exist, but it's really hard for the pros to win that particular micro engagement. So the Terrans kind of just win that one, to be honest. And then as far as their other spellcaster, the Disruptor, well, that's not really a spellcaster, right? It's still good to have. It's area of effect, and it doesn't have energy, it doesn't have that cooldown. You can hopefully save it for another engagement. The rest of this army is not really all that great. It might look great, again, you know, a bunch of zealots, you know, how your micro looks, and you think, oh god, no, I'm gonna lose. And then think of Byun's micro, and realize how unimportant 10 zealots could ultimately be. Because we're not even just talking about the micro. Another benefit of having that ghost spellcaster is not just EMPing the zealots, the Archons, and the High Templar. Which, again, is just such a vulnerable army to EMPs. Talk about snipes at this point. Like, him using 10 snipes is pretty worth it. Because they'll regain the energy. So, I mean, the ghosts are the most expensive thing to get, and they're hard to use as well, I guess. But in Byun's hands, they're exactly what he needs. Oh, the dive! Oh, another dive on top of the Disruptor, and he gets it once again. He gets it. Probes are being pulled into this. He's got nothing else to do with 60 probes. One Disruptor shot's not even gonna hit because it wasn't controlled. Classic was paying attention to his High Templars. A couple of these ghosts are left. No, only one ghost is left. But the High Templars cannot win a game by themselves. So as good as that looked as far as the High Templars not being EMP'd, trailing behind, dodging, I think the one attempted EMP, everything else in that army got destroyed. It just can't take on an army that can kite indefinitely, right? That's when you need that range of the Colossus. That's when you need the blink of the Stalkers to focus fire some of these units down. That's when you need a wall of Zealots behind, or force fields, right? Which you don't see very late in this game. Oh, the trick, the micro trick! Byun showing his world-class micro in this game, man. He just dropped ghosts on top of the High Templars. And while it didn't take down every single storm, it took down enough. That one ghost gave his life for the cause. And the cause is good, because the cause is a game 3 between these two guys. Oh, man. Yeah, that's it. That is it. The last Tampa is going to get destroyed. Zealots, as I said, just not important to Byun. And, I mean, you're not going to win with a bunch of probes, are you? Methinks not. 44 army supply to 10. Probes, I'm sorry, you don't count. And if Byun was down to 4 Marines and no Medivacs, well, then Classic might still win. Just because he has stacked defense around. But Byun has just enough to win, I think, as is. And then on top of that, he's still producing a little bit. Oh, the probe's gonna try and stop this army. Oh my god, they did a really effective job. Holy shit, they did a super effective job. It still doesn't matter, though. That is not all of Byun's army. And again, as is, apparently it's still gonna be good enough. High Templars cannot win engagements on their own. GG. Oh, wow. There's really not a lot of reasons to why Byun should have won that game. I'm gonna go back to his EMP drop first, and then go back to the Disruptors dying. That was sick. Woo, here it goes. Yeah, so I mean, it wasn't super effective. Did Classic last second split, maybe? I think he might have. But still pretty damn cool. Pretty damn cool. And I think it was around 28 minutes. Oh, we saw all the Disruptors die. which I just can't believe Byun was able to take on. I think it was like 6 disruptors, man. And the only reason a Terran player can ever do that is because the Protoss player won't believe that they can do it. Is the weird conundrum for the Protoss side of things, yeah. So the Protoss player, you know, basically the rule of disruptors is not to use them all at once. It's kind of the rule. As I was saying previously, you know, it's not even really about disruptors getting those beautiful shots. Disruptors as an actual engagement tool, I think, is one of their last benefits. It's the thing that they're supposed to do last. You know, first they're supposed to test the Terrans micro, are they paying attention or not. Then they're supposed to be space buyers, so forcing the Terran army to disengage, run away, or just simply split. And then when they are pounced upon, they go, oh shit, okay, let's throw everything out and hope we get a really juicy shot. But the thing is that a Protoss player still won't throw out all the disruptors at once, because the assumption is the Terran player will go, oh shit, and then run away, taking damage on the way out because they realize they took on more than they can chew. But if a Terran player correctly shift cues the disruptor shots, because you're throwing out one and then another one and then another one, and you go, oh shit, he's coming at me, I'm going to throw out all of them. By the time you get to that point, you're down to your last 2 or 3 disruptors, and they're actually getting sniped. So that's what happened here, right? So he shoots out like one and then another, kind of just testing the waters, seeing what he can do. Thinking, okay, with the disruptor shooting here, I can take on this engagement. I can take this on. So this is the last one of the, like, how to say, like, that was the last... Oh, I went to an observer. And one before these was the last, like, let's just use disruptors like we usually do. And this one, I think, was the, oh shit. This guy's actually collapsing on top of me. And by then, the shift queue had already kind of occurred. So... it's absolutely something that's not supposed to work, and that's kind of why it works. Yeah. It's sick game, sick game. Let's get to game 3. At game 3, on 2,000 atmospheres. Bottom left, Classic. Top right, Byun. And I cannot believe that Classic didn't win that last game. He was up 40 supply before he lost those disruptors. Even afterwards, he was still up, I think, 20. And Byun just microed out of his mind. And Classic, I think, was caught in the not quite I'm winning mental state. I mean, maybe he did think he was winning and just was a little cavalier, but I do think that he was anticipating a certain type of engagement, one where Byun was going to back away, back away, back away, back away. And then suddenly, it was the opposite. Byun wasn't backing away, he was collapsing on top of him. So that kind of expectation difference can be huge. And that's, again, another reason why something like that would work when it really isn't supposed to. Because if Classic just threw out his 3 disruptor balls 2 seconds sooner, if he went, oh shit, 2 seconds sooner, 1 second sooner even, then 2 of those actually hit. And 2 disruptors hitting a very clumped up Terran army, because they're basically all in. They're trying to kill the disruptors. Would have ended the game for Byun, I think. It still would have been a little tough, because Classic had such an army, such a disruptor-based army, and those are hard to win games with, but yeah. Anywho, game number 3 is Classic, starting off with some cheese, a little bit, maybe a little. Nah, just the proxy Stargate again, which actually for Classic can turn into quite the cheese, even if he gets a Nexus. You just consistently build out oracles. I'm gonna call it cheese. So Byun going again for the factory expand, something that he's been enjoying in kind of 2 different forms. First game, double gas. Second game, single gas. Third game, double gas. You'd think would be set up well against any type of proxies. And technically he is. But I think the problem is always, if it is a proxy, the pylon's going to be found out. So it probably won't be a proxy. And the probe was stuck and then killed. Is that what happened? Oh. Actually, this probe was going to go slap down a Stargate. And then it saw the Reaper. Why doesn't he have that much gas? Huh. He's actually very low on gas. Maybe it wasn't a proxy Stargate. Regardless, this probe was going to go somewhere and do something, and then decided not to. What's not about the Stargate is that he just pumps out Oracle after Oracle, and it's not necessarily that a Terran player doesn't have the means to defend a bunch of oracles flying their way, it's usually they aren't expecting it, so their micro isn't as good as it could have been. So Classic just goes for a Twilight Council at the end of the day. Alright. And Byun is playing super safe once again. Scouts the pylon once again, sees that there's nothing on it, and goes, alright, whatever. I mean, for Classic, it's still got the Reaper stay at home, I guess. Not that he was really worried about losing probes. And quick second barracks here. And Byun can get started on his stim. Not going up to a 1-1-1, not going up to a drop. Just getting a Cyclone, take a little bit of that map control, kill this one pylon. Which Classic does still need. Not building a bunch of pylons at once this early on in the game. And I think as a Protoss player, I'd be a little scared of that army coming over. Scared enough to get a shield battery. But with the late pylon, I don't know if Classic's gonna get it in time. Well, his warp gate's finishing, so I could see why he wouldn't need a shield battery, actually. Yeah, he doesn't need a shield battery. He's fine. I suppose he'd be playing a little bit dangerously, but... we'll see. We will literally see. Byun is coming over, and there's no shield battery, so we'll see if Classic made a mistake or not. Blink's not going to be done. Although I think it just got chrono boosted. Yeah, just finished the chrono boost. Oh, the Cyclone is going to head over to the right side. All right, no Blink, no Chase. Classic with warping of 2 more Stalkers. Does look to be nipping this in the bud, but then it doesn't realize that a tank was headed over here. Runs up the ramp into the face of the tank, and that tank actually unsieged GPS against that many Stalkers. Pretty damn good. Really quite good. And Classic just misread the situation entirely. Had he been 5 seconds faster to trying to take care of this, or he had waited 5 seconds more and maybe waited for Blink, this is not that big of a problem. But losing that many Stalkers now makes this a huge problem, as he can't get down that tank fast enough. He can't kill anything at all, because he's missing 3 more Stalkers. At this point, he lost the 4th one. He's about to lose a 5th. There goes the 6th. The lock-on still in effect. Oh, damn. This is looking like one of my games from earlier. This was not supposed to snowball in this fashion, man. And I'm not going to say I told you so on the shield battery, because I don't think that was actually what killed him. I think he was fine without a shield battery. He just walked up the ramp into a tank and lost 2 Stalkers immediately. I mean, that just sucks. That just sucks. But it really is reminiscent of a game I played earlier, because they even pumped out this Immortal and then tried to counterattack. So I'm getting some serious deja vu. I was like, well, at least I have my 3 bases. Let's try and win this game. I did not win that game, but I have full confidence that Classic can make a comeback happen. 1 Marine at a time. That's the Terran losing motto. 1 Marine at a time. Just as good as Classic. That's right. That's what I said. Clip it. Post it on Reddit. Take it out of context all you want. A Classic does need to... I don't even know. Like, without charge, his options are quite limited. If he had all of his Stalkers alive, if he has 9 Stalkers, then I'm not really all that worried. 9 Stalkers, 2 Immortals, a Guardian Shield. I am not worried really at all. But 2 Stalkers and 2 Immortals is really different. 2 Immortals, when they're so snipeable, I feel like really don't add a lot to these engagements. Once the Terran player is on, 3 barracks, I mean... The Immortal is the silent helper. It's the lineman. You're not supposed to notice him. He just kind of takes out Marauders when you're not paying attention. You put the Immortal like this, you shine a light on the guy, and they have no idea what to do. GG. Okay, so Classic could not bring that one back, just like I couldn't bring my game back. We really are the same. I'm just as good as Classic. What a bopping, though. What a bopping. That walk up the ramp, man, that screwed Classic so much. All right. GG. Game 2 was a hell of a game. Game 3, a little bit more of a letdown, but that game 2 was pretty sick. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you like the cast. Like, subscribe, comment, all the good stuff on the YouTube. And I'll see you later for more StarCraft.